This show contains profanity, advice you should never follow, humor that you might not enjoy. The names have been changed to protect the guilty. Do not try this at home.
On this week's Pox and Puss podcast, we talk about Q-tips, some guy named Rattler, and surprise, Puss tells a poop story. Greetings, Yellow Blazers, Blue Blazers, Hiker Trash, Bill Bryson lovers, Bill Bryson haters. Thanks for listening to the Pox and Puss show. My name is Pox Holiday, and sitting to my left is...
Tits McGee.
And, today we're going to talk about taking kids in the woods the legal way and bad weather. So we'll be right back. Tits McGee. Guess what, Pox and Puss listeners? We have our first sponsor, House of Swank Clothing. T-shirts, hoodies, tote bags, baby onesies with all kinds of designs ranging from caffeine, bacon, moonshine, Pussy Riot, the popular Namaste Bitches, and much, much more. Visit www.houseofswankclothing.com. Make sure you put that www in there. It's really important. Well, welcome to the Black Friday edition of the Pox and Puss podcast. If you can hear squeaking around upstairs, that's my wife walking around. If you can hear the leaf blowers outside, it's leaf blowers outside. Oh, there goes a truck. And let's see, dogs barking. A rare afternoon recording for Pox and Puss. And by rare, I mean once out of the 5 times. But Black Friday... Puss and I have both worked we've both worked many a Black Friday. And this is the first time in a long time that I know it's like the third time in the last 13 years that I'm probably not working a Black Friday. What about you?
That's about par.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to always make it a deal where it was like, I'll work Black Friday, I'll work Christmas Eve if I get New Year's Eve off, or work one of those. I usually had one manager where it was like, you get me for 2 out of the 3. Like, I signed up for a retail job. I know what the deal is. So, fuck it. But, and actually the place where Puss and I both worked, today was their first time they have ever had a doorbuster sale. Do you know that?
I did. Yeah, I saw.
A doorbuster that you could also take advantage of online.
Which I did, by the way.
Me too. Bought my wife a jacket.
Fuck no, I'm not going into that store right now on Black Friday.
Hell no.
No.
I did walk to another discount outlet store, maybe like a quarter mile from here.
Wally's Discount Jamboree.
Yeah. Ollie's Bargain Outlet, or it was Ollie's Bargain Warehouse, I think is it's called. It's just Ollie's. Walked around and we bought a trash can for our bathroom.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Regular ass price, nothing special, just...
Hey, we need this.
Yeah, hey,
treat yourself.
I did. We treated ourselves to a trash can, and it was nice.
Quick, what was your favorite thing to treat yourself to on the trail?
Heroin. No. Treating myself on the trail. Honestly, a hotel.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a treat yourself kind of moment.
My first thought was Coca-Cola and Q-tips.
Yeah, I think for me, man, I was thinking about Q-tips the other day because I didn't use Q-tips that often on the trail, but occasionally they'd come in a box. Mm-hmm. And there was this Campmore the other day sent out this tweet that was like, "Hey, has anybody ever hiked the Appalachian Trail?" And there were only like 3 of us that answered the tweet, and they didn't fucking say a word. And it was like, well...
I did. Like, was that it?
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I did. And I was like, and actually I mentioned Peace Pipe, because when we were in Pennsylvania, where they're headquartered, I think they're right there.
Or Jersey or something?
Jersey, yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
And...
Not the same thing.
There was, her pack had a... she and Prof carried canister gas, and I can't remember what they used, and so she had it on like the one and they both carried external frame packs too, and so she had it on one of the pockets on the outside, and there was in Delaware Water Gap there was a church that had a hostel, and I'm blanking on the church now. But so she just literally had like her external frame pack propped up with her 2 trekking poles, and it was in the direct middle of summertime heat sun, and we were all inside, and bam! I mean, everybody thought someone had been shot behind this church. People came running out, and we could just see Peace Pipe running, like, kind of toward, like, I can't remember if she was running in some direction, either away or to her pack. And we're all like, what the fuck? Like, did she just get shot? And there was a guy who was a former cop who we all kind of suspected had a gun. And
there's always that guy.
Yeah. And we're like, oh my God, did he just shoot Peace Pipe? Or did she just get shot? Or she was screaming or yelling or something. So the fucking pack, just like the whole sleeve exploded, and then it blew. Yeah, the canister exploded, and it bent the frame of her pack.
Holy
and
crap.
I think it might have either bent it or broke it or something like that. Like, it blew it the fuck up. Like, she was just really lucky it wasn't on her when it happened.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so I tweeted back. I was like, yeah, I did, and I know that at Melissa Lummis, or, you know, whatever it is, and, you know, at Peace Pipe, whatever the hell her Twitter handle is, I know that she had to buy a pack from you guys. And she's like, yeah, I did. And, like, nobody fucking responds. And then, like, our good buddy, Thru-Hiker 2013, the UK listener, he...
Don't refer to him as the UK listener.
well, actually... and
one of our many UK listeners.
I'm gonna say 7. One of 7.
One of several.
Several.
One of many.
one of many. Through AT Pox and Puss listeners, he even responded, and nothing from Campmore.
What?
But got me thinking about that hostel, that church, and I remember we had Q-tips, and like it wasn't a big deal for us to have them. But I remember this girl, she was like, "Oh, Q-tips," and she hadn't thought about them since Georgia. And I'm not kidding you. She went through like 6
Gross.
on just like her left ear.
No,
So that
yucky,
means
yucky,
12 of them, and each time it came out the same golden color
Stop
each
it.
time. Sorry.
I don't like that.
It's like the color of
older
this.
I get, I mean, I up until I was probably like 28 years old, I could not be grossed out.
Yeah.
Like, and now, like, I watch a rough episode of Tosh.0 and, like, I want to puke all over myself.
Whatever you did you watch the most recent one?
No.
Oh, don't even watch the opening then.
It's terrible. Like,
Yeah.
I used to have no problem with watching people, like, break bones or throw up or bleed or whatever.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, oh, I can't do it. Even just you talking about Q-tip girl makes me grossed out.
Yeah, and it was so disgusting when it first started happening, and then it just became comical because it was like you're thinking to yourself, like, the next one has to have less. And it just kept coming out. You're like, oh, I'm not trying to gross you out, but it was just like, oh. And each time she's like, oh. And she's there with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend's just like, oh. And like he does his like 1 time, 2 times, good. And then she's just like, oh. And it's like, how did you fucking hear?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
how far are you going? For listeners at home, I'm being leaned upon by a 45-pound elk hound.
He's trying really hard to look cool about it too.
Well, his name is Kool-Aid.
He's just like, meh, no, it's all good.
But yeah, so holy shit, how did we get there?
That's gross.
How did we even get there?
I don't know.
Campmore. Q-tips.
Treat yourself.
But yeah, I guess yeah, Q-tips would be pretty sweet. Hotel rooms.
Please don't. Let's not mince words here. Like, I was definitely more excited about a hotel room than I was about Q-tips, but from the day to day,
Yeah.
a Q-tip was definitely appreciated.
Then I would have to say a Mountain Dew. Like at the time, I can't drink a Mountain Dew now, but a Mountain Dew, something like that, was definitely part of my plan.
I met a group of guys somewhere in Virginia or like northern North Carolina, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
They called themselves the Texas Train, and it was these like 4 college buddies that on New Year's Eve, I think they were planning on staying home and they were going to watch whatever shitty show was on TV. And one thing that came on was a National Geographic special on the Appalachian Trail. Actually, it wasn't the Appalachian Trail. It was called The People of Appalachia. So they watched this documentary on the people of Appalachia, and they thought that it was fake because it was just like these like slack-jawed yokels that didn't have any teeth, and like they kept like National Geographic would like every now and then put in clips from, you know, different movies that super stereotype the people of Appalachia, and you know, but yeah. So they were like, no way is this National Geographic real. This has to be fake. And so they Googled the people of Appalachia, and the first thing that came up was Appalachian Trail. And they were like, oh, what the fuck is this? And none of them had ever heard of it. And so they Googled it, and then they were like, we gotta do this. And so that's why they were on the trail.
Because they wanted to see Appalachian people.
Yeah. But the best part about it was their research on the trail was watching the people of Appalachia over and over again. And, like, none of them, they were, like, I want to say they were, like, law students or they, you know, university students. They were relatively clean cut. And from watching the people of Appalachia, they were like, all right, what are the solid facts that we can write down about the people of Appalachia? They smoke hand-rolled cigarettes and or chew tobacco. So we all have to do that. None of them were smokers, but they all took up smoking or abusing tobacco products in some way. They drink a lot of Mountain Dew, so they drink Mountain Dew all the time. They seem to wear, like, blue reflective sunglasses a lot in a shield style, but not like the cool, like, Jay-Z style, like in the like, you know, early 1990s Oakley's
blue
style.
Blockers.
Yeah. So they all got blue reflective sunglasses, and it was like they seemed to have something tied around their head all the time. So they always had like a bandana or like an old ripped up t-shirt tied around their head. And these guys were some of the funniest guys I met the whole time that I was on trail. One of the guys' trail name was Rattler. And I don't know where he got it. I actually think he killed it himself.
It wasn't like, what?
He had a rattlesnake rattle around his neck because one of the guys on the documentary had killed a rattlesnake in the backyard and cut off that sumbitch's tail, put it on a string.
Was he actually called Rattler or Rattler?
Rattler.
That's how he signed registers. Yeah. Rattler. Oh my God.
It was awesome. I think I only ran into like one of them once, and he told me the whole story about why they were on the trail because of the documentary, The People of Appalachia, and I was like, all right, it's a little bit backwards to end up on the AT, but I approve. This is hilarious. They were funny guys.
I met a guy early on, like just, you know, within the first few days in Georgia, and he was doing a section, and he had done a bunch of sections. I can't remember his whole story. It was early on, but he's like, so how far are you guys going? I'm like, well, we're planning on going all the way to Maine. And he's like, so I guess that means you guys are going to be like going through North Carolina, Tennessee? Yeah, like, yeah, we are. He's like, man, let me tell you, and like, he didn't ask where we were from. And being from North Carolina, I was like, oh, okay. He's like, let me tell you guys about North Carolina. I'm like, oh, okay,
Tell us.
Please do. He's like, there's motherfuckers living in like school buses out there. Like, oh, really? He's like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of people that live in school buses. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm not shitting you. I can't remember where it was. Somebody probably knows. But there's like one point in time in North Carolina where you're like, there's a motherfucking school bus over there.
Motherfucking school buses all parked next to each other with drop cords hanging from one to the next to the next.
Yeah, exactly. I was like,
one for big sister, one for middle sister, one for little brother.
Don't put your dick in that hole. But
can that be the closer?
Yes.
Don't put your dick in that hole.
You've heard that joke, haven't you?
No.
You ever heard the joke of the salesman?
No. Oh boy.
Yeah, there's 3 holes. There's 3 holes in the wall. Yeah, so it seems like there are always tales of redneckiness and misunderstanding, like the old, like, I'd like, you know, it's bad to say this, but like, I'd like to hear an actual account of the fish hooks in the eyes story. I don't want to, and I'm not trying to sound sick, but like
Right.
I've always wondered like if that was a
Did it actually
real
happen?
thing or that was a
Around the time that all that was happening was the first backpacking trip that I ever did, which happened to be in that area.
right.
At one point on trail, like, there was a guy with a four-wheeler and a shotgun and a hound dog standing on trail, and he said, "Trail's been redirected, you can follow the tags," and he had, like, tagged trees.
Yeah.
And it basically, like, trail, and then in, like, an oxbow shape, like, around, and he was just like, "Follow the tags," and we were like, all right, well, we're either walking to our doom, or this will just redirect us to the trail, and they can keep growing their pot or whatever they're doing right here. And we got back to the trail, and it was fine.
And that was, just for listeners, that was around
Irwin
Banner Elk,
got a bad rap for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was that. There was
Apple House Shelter.
Yeah.
Apple House Shelter just being half a mile from the woods.
Yeah.
I mean, half a mile from the road was not ideal. I did stay there.
I did not.
I stayed there. Yeah, I don't think that was just, we went from Over Mountain to there, and like going from Over Mountain to Apple House was like I didn't see anything but my feet that entire day.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those like just wear you the fuck out,
Yeah.
like am I still on the trail kind of days.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until we got like a mile away that it finally got down below the clouds, and you're like, oh, okay. But yeah, it just kind of sucked. But there were about 5 of us there, so it didn't feel as bad, and it wasn't everything I had read was don't be there like Friday through Sunday.
Yeah. So I have to tell a quick story.
Okay.
I met my boyfriend of like 8 or 9 months' parents this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
We had Thanksgiving before real Thanksgiving, and his mother is full Asian. His father is typical American whitey, and it was a little weird. Like, I don't know. I just
The Asian aspect?
well, there were some highly, and I hate to play into stereotypes, but there were some highly stereotypical moments. Like, there really was plastic on like every horizontal surface to make for easy cleaning. Like, I asked my boyfriend, I was like, "What's with all the plastic?" And he was like, "Oh, when my brother and I were kids, we used to throw our toys up on the tables, and she didn't want to ruin the tables." And it's like, that was like 18 years ago. Yeah. He was like, "I don't know, she just hasn't remembered to take it off." I'm like, in 18 years? So I had a classic meet the parents / see your boyfriend around his parents for the first time moment. I was making dessert for our Thanksgiving, and so I'm like making my apple pies and blah 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 blah, and
Latticing your apple pie.
latticing the tops of my apple pies. Yes.
Nice.
I finished, everything's in the oven. I've kind of finished up, and I think to myself, like, I should go make sure that I didn't get my shirt. I was wearing a white shirt, and I was like, I should make sure I didn't get this dirty before dinner. So I step into the bathroom to look in the mirror and make sure my shirt's good, and I just happened to like glance over at the toilet when I'm looking in the mirror, and I realize,
And you got your nuts stuck in your zipper?
no,
That's something about Mary, sorry.
Wrong story. No, but I look over, and it's when you realize that the water in the toilet bowl is just a little bit higher than it should be. Like, something bad's happening.
Yeah.
And there's one lone piece of like toilet paper that's like swirling, but it's too close to the top.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh boy, it's bad. I should probably. So I like slide out of the bathroom, go up to my boyfriend. I kind of like whisper in his ear. I'm like, something's wrong with the toilet. You should probably check it out. He says, okay. So
Was this at your hand?
No.
Okay, it was already in there.
It was in there. Like,
Yeah.
that was just it. It was like, the one who calls it to attention clearly was the one that dealt it. But
Right.
it was not the case. I was just checking to make sure everything was cool with my shirt. So I like walk out, and I'm like, oh crap. So I tell him, and I am watching from across, like, almost the other, like, there's, like, the main portion of the house is pretty much, like, pretty open concept. So I'm on the other side of the house, but I can see him, like, walk into the bathroom, Asian mom, so all shoes are at the front door, so everybody's walking around in socks.
Right.
And so I'm just sort of like...
The shoes are all next to the gong.
Right.
Right.
So I see my boyfriend go into the bathroom, and I'm like kind of watching the bathroom door, and all of a sudden I just see his crumpled up socks get thrown out the door. And then there was like a plug-in like space heater gets thrown out the door. And then suddenly like towels start to get thrown out the door. I'm like, that boy just walked straight into that bathroom, walked up to the toilet and said, "It looks all right to me," and flushed it. Like I knew that's what he had done. And so it promptly started overflowing, and he starts throwing anything that's in this impeding wall of water's way out the bathroom door. And all I could think is like, what a guy thing to do. I just told him, like, hey man, there's something wrong with the toilet, and there's 8 adults in this house that are about to put down a gigantic meal. You may want to make sure that that's in working order before we actually do so. Okay. And he just walks in and flushes the toilet. So after about 20 minutes of he and his dad like crawling around under the house to like try and fix whatever's wrong with the I don't even know what they're doing. So they fix the toilet. It's all working. We all eat. But, like, right before we eat, I just sort of, like, leaned into his ear and I'm like, you just flushed the toilet, didn't you? Like, you just walked right in there and flushed the toilet. And he was like, yeah, I did. And I was like, I knew it. Why would you do that? You totally set you and me up for failure. I was the last one in there. Everybody
turn off the water.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Oh,
so God. That was my awesome meet the parents story of me trying to be proactive, like, hey, somebody go fix the toilet. Okay.
That looks good to me.
Well, it's fine.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk about something that's near and dear to both of our hearts. Hoods in the woods. So, I was on the Twitter the other day, and I came across them that apparently you know about, at Ghetto Hikes. And and the way it's set up, and the way Ghetto Hikes is set up, is here's the description of it. I'm 28. I have a full-time job leading urban kids, parentheses, of all races, on nature hikes. I simply write down shit they say. 428.8 thousand followers, following 0. Which is badass. So at Ghetto Hikes, they have just basically taking kids out in the woods. And both Puss and I have both worked with kids who want to be in the woods / don't want to be in the woods. More on your end, not necessarily wanting to be there.
Yeah, most of the kids that I worked with were one of 3 things. They were kindly asked not to return to the camps that they had previously attended. Mm-hmm. They were on too many medications to go to a standard summer camp, which usually is 2 or 3. Most of my kids were on 5 to 8 medications at a time. And then there were also a small number of kids that were court-ordered in some way, shape, or form. So most of these kids had no wilderness experience, did not want to have any wilderness experience, and were kind of pissed that, honestly, if I was a camper at my camp, I probably wouldn't want to be there either. I had a good time because it meant that I was in the woods all summer. And,
getting paid to be in the woods.
And I got a paycheck, so that was cool. Yeah, these kids were not generally particularly happy to be there. And a lot of them came with a certain kind of threat, like that their parents were saying, like, if they get kicked out of this program, please just send them directly to, like, the local mental hospital or something like that. Yeah. And we'll pick them up when we're back from our cruise. They'd drop their kids off and then they'd go have their vacation.
Oh, wow, yeah.
That was pretty common. And so there was usually a contingency, like, if they do something bad enough, send them to juvenile hall and we'll work it out when we get home, or, send them somewhere else. So, like, a lot of these kids were really rough around the edges, didn't want to be there. Like, I mean, we've all had days where you didn't want to sleep in a tent that night, right. So I can only imagine what, like, your summer camp experience was 12 days of not wanting to sleep in a tent at night.
12 days, they're
generally,
average, yeah. Well, so my experience was mainly, actually, a lot of mine were kids who had been working there for the last year or two to get to that place to go.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of my kids wanted to be there, except for the fact that, and this is a really popular place for kids to go in the summertime from all around the country. And so kids are generally looking forward to this. They might not necessarily know what they're getting into. but they've been working towards this for months to years, except for the one group that I took out where it was the same kind of situation as yours, except they were sent from one side of the country to the other and thrust into this situation where they had never been in anything like this before.
Yeah.
And they were the first, and it's a designated group that within this organization, they set it up. So like at youth risk can join this group and work towards this. Well, they didn't really work towards it. They were kind of on scholarship and were thrust into this. And there was no warning that they were this type of group. So normally just, people that have been working there for like a year or so can take anybody, people that have been working there for a couple of days can take kids out in the backcountry if they have the experience. Well, the group that I had that was adjudicated, they had a guy who it was his first group he'd ever taken in the woods. The first night, they threatened him. The second day, they all got into a fight amongst themselves. And then I think on the third day, a friend of mine who had been working at this camp for years had been called out and said, hey, you've got to take him out. And it was a 12-day program as well. They were told, hey, you've got to come out here and handle this group. And then it turned out that it was too much for just one person. And so he requested me, because I had laughed at him the hardest for having to go out and deal with this group. So I got to join them. And their 12-day program turned into a 6.5-day program. Yeah. It was like, hey, you guys won. We get to go home early. And in that time, I was threatened with knives, and, my favorite time was being told that bears didn't exist. Like, they thought it was like snipe hunting. They're
okay.
like, oh yeah, you guys keep talking about smellables, and like I'm telling them, like, no, I saw like, waist to torso sized bears on me, right where we are a week ago. I'm like, yeah, right. And these kids like regularly kept like open Gatorade packets in their pockets. So it's like, oh, like, no, I promise. But it was like, we need to get you guys out of the woods because you're going to die. But, so it really hit home when I found at Ghetto Hikes. And here's just a few of them. This is the one, and my wife worked at the same camp, and my wife worked at the camp similar to yours. So it was like the thing where it was like a minimum you had to be on 3 medications and have 2 mental issues. Yeah. And, so here's one of my favorites. And I'm going to read these as straight as I can. They have a lot of inflection in them written into it. Quote, I'm a sneak one dem tadpoles into Sean's ingredients bags, or whatever you call it, trail mixers. Let's see. Rocks, sticks, rivers. Need to come out here with my fucking art supplies, paint all this beautiful shit.
Oh, that's so cute.
Quentin's fat ass way back there. Homie can't keep his pants up, trying to borrow a belt. I'm like, nobody here wears size equator. I'm trying, but I can't do it. Let's see. Mr. Cody, you think I get in trouble if I shoot me one of them extincted animals? I never saw this one. Oh, Mr. Cody, when you say dem swans mate for life, you mean like she good to go whenever? Like one dem forever stamps? Bring the first AIDS kit. Leon think he tore his rotisserie cuff.
What was the kid's name? Leon Nicky?
Leon think he tore his rotisserie cuff. First AIDS kit.
Bring your first AIDS kit.
First AIDS kit. Yo, Mr. Cody, how much you give me if I drink this puddle? Are we just laughing at racist shit? Is that it? Like that's?
It's not racist if. So, Did you have any, like, noteworthy, like, really stellar stories from when you worked with kids?
Man. One time I did have a group go out, and it was probably the second or third group I'd ever taken out. And in the middle of the trip, well, it was the first night, we'd set up our tents, and this one, we were kind of close to about 2 other groups that were out there. And this one girl came over, and she's like, we got a bunch, they were from Mississippi or something like that, or Louisiana. She's like, we got a bunch of rattlesnakes over by our tents. You think we should move? I'm like, well, I mean, how close? She's like, I think there's a whole nest of them over there. I was like, well, maybe so. Like, you can easily move over to the next campsite next to that. And I'm like, okay. And so they moved over. And then all of a sudden, my group starts acting up. I hear a bunch of like, oh, it sounds like just a bunch of fucking gibbons. And they're like, I come around, there's this big fat ass fucking rattlesnake just making its way through the middle of our camp. And this is in New Mexico. And, so it's like, it's like seeing a rat. Like, yeah, you're going to see those things. And, and so I'm like, all right, everybody get back. And then they all start taking fucking flash photography of it. And I'm like, get the fuck back. And they're getting, so they keep going back. And literally at one point in time, I was finally like, get the fuck back. So they did. And, when an adult uses curse words, they tend to pay attention. And so they all jump back a little bit. And I'm like, all right. Okay, that's good. Like, good, they're done. And then so that night, in the middle of this rattlesnake making its way through our campsite, this guy comes walking from the other direction down the trail. And he was another younger guy who had taken a group out. And he came over to tell me that they had a rattlesnake in theirs. I'm like, whoa, stop right there. There's a rattlesnake about 20 feet in front of you. He's like, oh, shit. And so rattlesnake infested area. I was like, oh, well, fuck it. It's over with now. And so the next morning I get up, and this guy's like, this group was all from South Carolina. I remember that. And one of the dads was from it must have been like the fucking Bronx or something like that. And he was from New York, I know that. But he's like, I get up, it's like 5 o'clock in the morning, get out of my tent. It was like the few minutes a day I had where I did not have a camper in my fucking face. And I get up and I'm like, all right. I look over and he's standing over down one end. I thought, well, maybe that guy's just peeing. Like, no. He hears me and he turns around. He comes over like, hey, Pox. Like, yeah. He's like, I was looking down the valley here, and there's this beautiful valley behind us. I was looking over in the valley over here, and I noticed the deer, fucking mule deer. It's like I noticed the deer, they bound whenever they run. Well, why do they bound? He's like, do you ever notice how they bound? And it's like, yeah, I've noticed that before. And he's like, why do they bound? And I'm like, I think it's just kind of the way they run. They just kind of get away. Maybe just kind of, they can change direction. But, and he's like, yeah, they just bound. I don't know why that is. I'm like, yeah, right on. So he's like, I also noticed these hoof prints. I'm like, hoof prints, okay. He's like, these hoof prints. And I'm like, well, and this place is a working ranch, so occasionally they're like a random cow will be out there, but usually they fucking get eaten. And then I thought, well, hoofs, it's probably a fucking big-ass mule deer or maybe an elk. And he's like, yeah, let me show you where they are. And they were like these obviously huge cat prints. Like, bigger...
Like big cat. Like
big cat. Like
panther cat.
Yeah, like I'm making a fist, and that's like just its back pad. And like, I mean, it really truly is like almost an entirely open hand of mine. But like an open hand. And it was like, I'm pretty sure these are like a cat. He's like, a cat? And I get out my little guidebook and I show him like, yeah. And he's like, you sure it's not like a coyote or something? Like, no, I don't think it's a coyote. It's fucking obviously a big ass cat. And so this big ass cat had come up from the valley, walked between 2 campers' tents, and it's a really sandy area where we are, and walked around 3 of the 4 sides of my tent. And it obviously backpedaled a little bit around the end where my head was, and then continued to walk around, and then walked over to like, a good ways away where our cook site was, and then disappeared back down to the valley. But it was like, it had walked around, it had just because my tent was separate from everybody else's. And all theirs were almost basically in a line, and mine was kind of off to the side. And so, yeah, it had walked around 3/4 of the side of my tent, and then decided, fuck it, and took off. And I was
this
like...
guy smells like shit.
Yeah, like, oh, jeez. And I was like, holy shit. And so this is taking a little bit, and, it's now probably about 6 o'clock or so. And the campers have started to wake up. And then right about that fucking time is about 5 or 6 of the 12 campers are up. This fucking chorus of coyotes up the hill just erupts. And it was just like, all right, let's go get the bear bags, motherfuckers. And everybody's like, what's going on? I'm like, nothing. I'm like, not that I'm worried about coyotes, but it was just like, there's a fucking zoo in the middle of this place.
We've had
like,
just about enough.
Yeah, like this spot, it's time to go, because it's a pretty popular first day spot for a lot of the campers. And so I was like, this place is just known for having food around it and everything like that. Like, let's roll. It was just like, holy fucking shit. What about yourself?
My very most memorable Hoods in the Woods story. It wasn't particularly common. Generally, the age group that I was working with was somewhere between 12 and 15 years old. Mm-hmm. So just old enough to think that they were too cool to be there.
Right.
And generally, they were almost all guys. They were almost all 12 to 15-year-old boys. But occasionally, I would have 2 girls, and generally they were always kind enough that if they were going to put one girl in my group, they'd put another girl in my group so that she wasn't the only one. Mm-hmm. But it was this particular camp's rule that for every group of kids, there was a male counselor and a female counselor. So in one of my groups, I had 2 roughly 12-year-old girls. This is only really relevant because whenever, like, one of them had to go to the bathroom, it was just easier. Like, the camp rule when you were in the woods was if somebody has to go to the bathroom, you have to have a bathroom buddy. They need to be close enough that you can talk to each other. I'm not saying, like, he needs to hold your hand while you're taking a deuce, but, need to have another camper nearby. And so it was always kind of nice because you got 2 girls. Cool. One of you has to pee. Go pee together. But we're backpacking, and we're backpacking into this area, and I know that we're like, a quarter of a mile from where we're gonna camp, and we're walking in, and there's wild blackberry bushes everywhere, and I know that we're like 2 weeks too early. So the blackberries look good, but they're not good. Like, if you eat one, they're really super sour. They're not mature. They're not ripe.
Right.
And so as we're walking in, I'm at the trail, I'm leading this group of kids, and I turn around and I point to the blackberry bushes, and I'm like, all right, guys, these are blackberry bushes. They're wild blackberry bushes. You can eat them, but you can't eat them now. Like, we're just a little bit shy of peak season for these. Let me just tell you that if you eat these, you're going to feel very sick. And I like kind of gathered everybody around, and I was like, all right, I want everybody to hold their hand up in the air and say, on my honor, I will not eat any of these blackberries. And so it's like this kind of like trying to engage them so that you can get some sort of verbal agreement that they will not eat any of the blackberries. Okay, cool. And so they all, like, this chorus of small children says, I promise I will not eat any of the blackberries. Cool, great. And I actually think I might have even pulled one off and, like, had one kid eat half of one and say, like, how did this taste? And, you specifically grab the one that looks the least ripe out of any of them. How did this taste? It tasted awful. Cool. Everybody agree? Awesome. Let's go set up camp for the night. So these 2 little girls, I And I remember one of them was awesome and one of them was horrible. Like, one of them was, like, the best, most well-behaved kid that I had, like, the whole summer. And the other one was a terror. And so we get to camp, set up tents, get everything together. We've got, like, a little bit of downtime before it's time for dinner. But, like, at this camp, it was, like, downtime is trouble time. So there is no downtime. You keep everybody busy all the time. And the little girls said, you know, we have to go pee. Can we go pee? Sure, you can go pee. Where should we go? How about you go that direction? And I kind of point them back towards the trail. But I said specifically, like, all right, promise me now you're not going to eat the blackberries. Okay, we won't eat the blackberries. So they leave. And they come back, like, half an hour later. Like, it was starting to be the point where, like, I start walking down the trail that direction to try and find them. And I kind of meet them halfway. And their fingertips are all purple, and their lips are all purple, and there's purple smears all over their t-shirts. And I said, all right, so you ate the blackberries, and they both, like, their jaws just dropped.
How'd
like,
you know?
What do you mean? How could you possibly know? And I was like, well, number one, I told you the first day that I know everything, so you shouldn't try and do anything and try and keep it a secret from me. But second of all, like, I just need to know how much you ate.
Yeah.
And they were like, almost none. In fact, all of them that we put in our mouth, they tasted bad, so we spit them out. And I actually kind of thought, like, all right, that seems logical. They're not ripe yet, so that makes sense. So we all walked back to camp together, and right very close to the entrance of like, where our campsite was, which wasn't, it was a primitive campsite, and it wasn't even, like, an established campsite. It was just, like, a flat area. There was a big rock, like a big boulder, that was, you know, on me, probably somewhere between my belly button and my boobs. So, you know, fairly good sized rock. But it was flat on one side, so, like, you could kind of stand on one side of it, and, like, you know, it was a good rock to, like, change behind or something like that.
Yeah.
So we come back, and of the two girls, there was the well-behaved one and the not well-behaved one. I pull the well-behaved one aside, and I'm like, all right, seriously, how much of those berries did you actually eat? And she says, well, I didn't really eat it. I mean, I did. I put some in my mouth, but they tasted bad, so I spit them out. And I'm like, okay, well, what about the other girl? She's like, yeah, she ate a lot. So I was like, all right. And as soon as she says this, I hear this shrill scream. And it's just this, like, like, this awful scream. And I'm like, what is going on? I look around, and there's the other girl standing on the far side of this rock. And I walk over, and as I'm walking over, I'm like, how's it going? And she's just like, I have to go to the hospital. And I was like, why do you have to go to the hospital? And she says, because I can't stop shitting. And I just walked up, and I'm like, what do you mean you can't stop shitting? She's just like, it's running down my legs. It's in my shoes. I can't stop. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, so this kid probably ate, like a half a Nalgene of not ripe blackberries, because we didn't give any of these kids any sugar, and they were all, like, so sugar dependent that she just wanted wanted something that tasted sweet and good. And so she ate a lot of these blackberries and just gave her, it wasn't even, like, explosive diarrhea. It was just, like, this constant stream of diarrhea that she could not stop. And it was like, she was like, what do I do now? And I'm like, this is the ultimate natural consequence. I'm really sorry, but you're just going to have to wait it out there, champ. You let me know when you stop squirting, and I'll get you some fresh clothes. But until then, hang tight, man. And we literally, like, she stood there screaming at me. I mean, she couldn't leave this rock. Like, she couldn't walk around this rock because there's all these people around, and she's shat herself.
Shitting.
And she's just can't stop shitting. But, so I checked on her often, brought her some electrolyte-enhanced water. I kept making sure that she was as well-fed as she could. And she stood there for, like, 45 minutes, just shitting her brains out. And when she was done, I basically just brought over a trash can, or, like, a trash bag. And I was like, everything that you have shat on, you need to throw in this bag, and we'll go from there. And so she, like, underwear, shorts, socks, shoes, like, all gets thrown in this bag, and I'm like, cool, so you're packing this out.
Yeah.
And, well, what else do you have? And, like, she was one of those girls that, like, her parents sent her to wilderness camp with, like, an assortment of skirts,
Yeah.
And, frilly pink things, and you're just like, fuck it. Boys, who's got a spare pair of cargo pants? And, I just got a pair of pants.
Yeah.
And spare, whatever else we could get, and put this kid in these pants, and, it was somebody else's, camp shoes that she wore the rest of the time, because her hiking boots were what she had shed in, and those were toast. But it was just that, alrighty, well, there you have it.
Karma's a bitch, bitch.
Yep.
God. Loveliness in the woods. Going to take a break. Be right back. All right, so we do ask that people call in and tell us some crazy stories every once in a while. Again, the number is 828-394-IJAM or 828-394-GLAM, or also known as 828-394-4526. Leave us a voicemail. Let us know what kind of crazy experience you had on the trail, or if you just have a regular ass story to tell, it's fine. But the main idea is we ask you to keep it short, 1.5, 2 minutes tops, because there is a limit to what Google Voice will let you leave as far as a voicemail goes. And we had one that came up that you're just like, oh man, I really, really, really wish this person had kept it pithy, as they say.
It's Peter Coffinail. You crazy kids have been following me on the Grizzle for Sugar Manizzle Bizzle as photo idol, and I think in light of the uber ultra freaking superstorm that's hitting the East Coast right now, you kids could probably be in need of some serious weather stories. So I got one that I thought was pretty interesting because it happened to me, and it totally fucked my shit up, at least for a split second. Having been in the military for 12 years and gone to war 3 times, I was never super scared of anything after a while. And on my Thru-Hike this year, I was coming out of Lehigh Gap in Pennsylvania in the midst of 2 storm fronts that were kind of coming towards each other. And I was going north, and coming out of Lehigh Gap, there's that rock face you have to climb up and then pretty much go over. Well, it was rerouted this year. I don't know how it was in '98 when you guys went through, but this year when you go over Lehigh Gap, you have to literally go over this freaking rock face. It's humongous and stupid. And I caught a southbounder coming down, soaking wet, with fear in his eyes. He's like, "Hey, dude, you might want to turn back. The weather's really going to be nasty when you get up there." And I saw the storm coming, but I thought to myself, you know what, man, I'm moving pretty fast. I got this. And by the time I got up there, man, it was just sheets of water coming down like razor blades, sideways, hit me in the face. And, my beard was in full-fledged awesomeness, so, it was blowing in the wind and catching everything. And so I ducked behind the rocks and just kind of started videotaping. I was like, man, this is so awesome. And I'm like, woo! And, a couple minutes later, the lightning started rolling in, and it was hitting everywhere around me. It was just crazy. I was just shitting in my pants because I was like, holy fuck, this is about to get seriously, incredibly dangerous, ridiculously fast. And as soon as that happened, lightning was, coming down on top of me. And so I found this little rock about the size of a couch cushion and literally threw my bag underneath that, and then I tossed my hiking poles down the side of the mountain because they were just aluminum ski poles, and so yeah, and did a video last will and testament hey, look, if anybody gets this, tell my wife I love her, tell my son he did great in school, and he can have my truck when he turns 18, and it was just a real random just holy shit, I can't believe I'm about to die kind of situation. And that lasted for about 2 hours. And so I ducked underneath this rock the size of a couch cushion, and it was just incredibly freaking ridiculously scary as fuck.
And what? Holy shit. Well, Google Voice will only let you leave a 3-minute message. So that's why you try and keep it at 2 in case you run over.
Let this be a lesson.
Let this be a lesson.
I really want to know the epic ending to your story.
Yeah.
But it got cut off by Google Voice.
But here's the cool thing. While you were out of town meeting the parents, I actually called Mr. Peter Coffinail.
Holy cow.
Yeah. But here's the bad news. When I went back to listen to the interview, it was complete gobbledygook. Not his fault. just a shitty recording on my end. So yeah, we'll just have to have Mr. Peter Coffin Nail back on the show whenever Puss can talk to him.
Coffin Nail?
Coffin Nail.
Wow.
Yeah, and you can actually follow him at Coffin Cables on Twitter, and then and he was also the person who was my first recommendation at Photo Idol.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was funny. He started following us on Twitter, and then I was like, you might want to go back and check out episode 1 because you kind of come up. And so he's at Photo Idol, FOTOIDOL on Instagram, or at Coffin, COFFIN, Cables, CABLES on the Twitter. And so he does some writing, and you can find his website on there too. He kind of mentions that. But so we'll be right back. Take a little break. Well, all right. Well, that's the Black Friday edition of the Pox and Puss podcast, which will be coming out on Cyber Monday. So you can always find us on Facebook.com/PoxandPuss. Of course, our Twitter and our Instagram accounts are at Pox and Puss. You know what I started today?
What'd you start today?
Our Pinterest account.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. Pox and Puss on fucking Pinterest. I have no clue what that is.
Oh, it's fun.
You have one?
Yeah.
What do you do on it?
You just like things that are pretty.
Okay.
That's it.
I just kind of figured I'd get it before somebody else
It's a therapist's dream. They can just have you like, oh, I like this, and I like this, and I'm self-affirming with this, and that's cool.
The only things that I've so far repinned or liked have been just like a regular old map of the Appalachian Trail and the cover of A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. Because, fuck it.
You can make entire folders about things to do with twinkly lights, and it's really nice. It's very fun.
I started it with. It's 10 hours old.
Oh, that's fine.
Our Pinterest.
It's at Pox and Puss, though?
I think so.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Cool.
That's the way. I got to rename it because it just came up with my name, Pox Holiday.
Oh, okay.
But the name of it was Pox and Puss.
Well, yeah.
But then it was like, what's your name? I was like, Pox Holiday.
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying.
I don't know.
That's fine.
But, so, yeah, we've had a lot of international interest in the show lately.
We're big.
We're big everywhere from Jamaica. We also are, we had, after the last episode, we had 8 downloads from Germany.
What?
And
Guten Tag.
I'm truly,
Shane.
I'm really attributing that to the amount of poop talk. I did include the word poop in the tag words for
German's really into poop talk.
Scheiße. Eisen me Scheiße.
Oh, Scheiße. Ausgezeichnet.
All I can ever think of is the episode of South Park wherever they discover that Cartman's mom is in a German Scheiße video. Oh, Eisen me Scheiße. Okie dokie. And so I hope we thoroughly offended people by talking about poop and talking about ghetto hikes today.
Yep.
Yeah, and of course you can find ghetto hikes at Ghetto Hikes.
There you go.
And as always, call the Pox and Puss hotline.
Call it on the hotline.
828-394-4526, bitches.
That was awesome. Just stop.
That's good. Don't put your dick in that hole.